forgot to press record. Okay, so again, Devin Galaudet, here we are. I forgot to press record, so we missed the first few seconds of the overview. I'm going to do it really fast this time, where we talked about the 5 love saviors, which are responsibility, honesty, acceptance, communication, and service, as in love is an act of. And then, of course, we talked about what action could you take to help make these things easier to achieve. We talked about the idea of slowing down. Don't go with your natural reaction. So this week we're going to be talking specifically about responsibility, which is an exciting thing. And we are going to, well, where do I start? So this weekend, I went to Disneyland with my sister and my daughter. We had a great time. We went on all the rides, all that kind of good stuff. But, you know, the reason why this is sort of important is that my sister is not a full sister. She's a half sister. She comes from my dad's side of the family. And really, you know, when I was sending out newsletters for all of this, one of the things that kind of came to mind was that, you know, my father, and I don't want to disparage him at all, like everything that I learned that I needed to know about relationships, I learned from him. And mostly I learned how not to have them. Great guy, one of the funnest people you'd ever meet in your whole world, but was married 7 or 8 times, something like that, had a whole slew of kids all across the planet. And again, I don't harbor that as sort of like a terrible, horrible thing. I mean, people do that kind of stuff. But really, if you're looking for long-term, lasting love, you know, this is one of those things where you try to do, you try to do more than what your reaction is. My father, and when we talk about responsibility, I'm going to explain this in a second. You know, my father was a good guy. I think he did the best he could considering his time and his space and his life. But when the going got rough, he got going. He was definitely, Papa was a rolling stone. Great guy. Loved him to pieces. Everybody loved him, whoever met him. But at the same time, he was, you know, he was there 1 minute and not the next. And that played an issue in all of his love relationships. And what does this have to do with responsibility within a relationship? I'm really not talking about like doing chores. I'm not talking about leaving the toilet seat up. I'm not talking about taking the garbage can out on Thursday because the garbage truck's coming. I'm talking about really like owning your nonsense. I'm talking about the stuff that we all have. It's frequently different for everybody. It's little touch tone things that we deal with on a very regular basis that quite frequently we don't want to deal with. So, you know, one of the things that I learned a lot just from, you know, growing up in my parents' house was how not to own anything. There was, and again, bless them both, but there was a fair amount of finger pointing and defensiveness. And so when we talk about responsibility, we're talking about the ownership of your stuff within the relationship. Because at some point, your nonsense is going to play a part within your relationship. If you want to do that as little as possible. Because if I say, hey, this thing is happening in my relationship, and my partner says, well, I'm doing it because of something that you did. Or I didn't do that. That never happened. You're just misunderstanding yourself or whatever. And these kinds of problems get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because it makes it more difficult for the person to go to their partner to get to the truth and love and understanding all that great stuff. So if, like as a general rule, responsibility is a great thing. You want to stop an argument really, really fast? I'm sorry. But more importantly than understanding I'm sorry to your other person because you don't want to hurt their feelings is understanding what your responsibility or what your ownership in the argument or the issue that comes up is taking place. So, by the way, I put this thing right next to my face. There's a join-in box. If you are interested in finding about, you know, me on iTunes, or if you have questions, or if you want to comment on something like that, DevinGalaudet.com is a great place to do that. And you can get our weekly newsletter. It costs free, so it's a whole bunch of free, fun stuff. And you can join anytime. So anyway, getting back to the responsibility notion is that how do you fix this? Again, slow down is a terrific idea. You don't want to get into the reaction, and sometimes it's really, really hard when we are feeling vulnerable, or we're feeling scared, or we're losing, or we want to wriggle our way out of something that we may have wriggled our way in. Oh, I got a clap. That's exciting. Okay, so thank you for that. So you don't want to wriggle out of stuff. If you're looking for a long-term love relationship with a great partner, you want to really promote this idea that you're going to be honest, forthright, and you're going to own your nonsense. So if I hurt your feelings, this is my opportunity to apologize, be conscious of trying to move beyond that. So, I got a whole bunch of things. Thank you that for the bubbles that's popping up right there. I'm grateful. So that's going to be the main focus on this. Each week we're going to keep talking about some of the things that will save your relationship. And if we are talking about saving your relationship, this means when you get into a new relationship, or if you're currently in a relationship where you're not, the relationship isn't as happy or as wonderful as you'd like to make it. So that means you get to be more kind to each other. And a great place to start is don't be defensive. If somebody says something that you don't like, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to explode. No one's going to die. Just, tell the truth and get in touch with how can I do this better? Because I'm telling you, this is my personal experience. When I come home and I know that I don't have to deal with sort of the nonsense within the relationship, I can go to my wife and say, here's how my day was, here's what went wrong. And if he has an issue with me, I get to just kind of quickly deal with it rather than it having to be no, I'm not going to let you accuse me of anything. I'm not a dud. You get it. So anyway, so focus on that. For future, we're going to talk about more next week, but I wanted to talk about a couple other things. Two things. One is next week, I'm not sure if we're going to be doing this at the same time because my wife and I, Morgana Ray, will be in Bali getting married for the 17th time in the 13th country. So if you are new to our story, we've been getting married around the world in part because it's a great thing to do. It's something when you keep getting relationships over and over and over again and not developing the one that you're in, long term, you have the choice of either having the same relationship with 100 different people, or you can have 100 experiences with the same person. And I would say the deeper, greater love is going to be that experience thing with the one person. So that is always our goal. So anyway, that's what's happening right now. So I'll find out more. I'll figure out the time differences, but I'm going to shoot for 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, even though I'm going to be in Bali. I might be tired. It might be late, but we're going to work on that one. Otherwise, we're definitely going to have a replay, and I'll make the notification and let you all know as soon as possible. The other thing is I got a wonderful letter from one of our readers, Mariah, who, and I'm paraphrasing the letter, basically saying, hey, I love all the relationship and love stuff. Thank you so much. It's good information. But where's the mystical? I want me some more mystical. Who keeps jumping on me, so I'm going to throw him off. And so I guess what we're going to do is I started to do a series on the Tree of Life. It was a very brief overview. But you want to get mystical? We're going to get a little bit mystical. Here's the Tree of Life, as we've talked about many a times. If you have not been following us and you are new, understand that this is sort of like a symbol that showcases the relationship between humanity and the divine, or God, or your innermost highest self, however you want to define these things, with the bottom being about the physical world. Think of it as the most fragmented part of us where everybody's different and everybody's apart. And this part on the top and my cat's tail, who I'm throwing off again. The part on the top, we're going to talk about that today. It is called Kether, and it is fantastic. Basically what it is, consider it the source of everything. All of it into one space. Everything into one space. When I say that, I'm talking about the source of all things. It's sort of like a part God, and it is part us, and it's all in this one fantastic cosmic soup, where there really isn't much separation between us and God. It's all sort of intermingled. Now, there's two ways you can look at this top sphere, which is called Kether, and the sphere is called a Sephirot in Hebrew, or Sephira for the singular. Kether it's really part of the unknowable, and really the only real debate that people have in sort of like communities when such details are discussed is whether or not this is the first place of no God or the last place of God. Again, we're dealing with sort of the unknowable here, but the important thing to understand is that in the original Hebrew, I will put this out to you, that Kether means crown. And it, again, is a Hebrew word. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I've heard of Kether and Kether. One of the things that you will find if you ever dive more into this Kabbalah stuff and you keep following me is that we really don't know for sure how these things are pronounced. Only because by the time, Hebrew came kind of back into a modern language, prior to that, there wasn't vowel pointing. So we don't really know for sure exactly how to pronounce some of these divine names and divine concepts. So, if I mispronounce something or you're used to hearing it another way, understand that we really don't know. So what's the important thing to understand about Kether, the crown, is that, each one of these spheres has sort of like a divine association to it. Consider it different names of God. Consider it to be different facets of the same gem. So it's all sort of one God, but it's a different element of God. And so the God name for Kether is called, forgive me, I'm not necessarily supposed to pronounce it, but, it's not a bad thing to at least understand it, is the word Ehyeh. That is spelled with, that's the Hebrew thing, which goes right to left, and then, of course, we speak left to right, which is an Aleph, Hey, Yod, and Hey. What's important about this is that its name actually means I am that I am. So I am that I am, what is sort of like what will strike you is that there's only this one thing, which is, again, this notion of Kether, where everything is all together and all one. And that it talks about a state of being. It's not like an action. It's not a thing. Like it is, it's just sort of a state. The best way I can describe it is that if you were to take an acorn, you would understand that within that tiny thing that you could hold in your palm contains all of the encoded information that you would ever need so that acorn, if treated in the right way, could grow into a 1,000-foot oak. Same thing with sort of like, the sperm and the egg come together, and all of the information that's needed for that little tiny dot of an egg to become an entire person totally exists. But you can say in this particular case that this Ehyeh, this Kether, this idea where everything is this one cosmic soup all jumbled together, is that giant oak tree, but it's really just the acorn. And think of it as the acorn in the box. Like all by itself, it's just staying in the box. It's not going to grow. It's not going to be any more. But all of the information is already tied up and encoded right there within. So Kether is sort of like the thing that is all in one, all together, all the time, no differentiation between us and each other or anything. It's all locked together in a tight sort of ball of complete and utter perfection, whether it's the last place of God or the first place of no God. It is sort of like the first level, the first veil that separates us from the divine. So it's mixed, but there's still some separation there. Anyway, this is probably, it gets a little dense, but the good news is watch this video, watch it a second time, understand this is just the very first, most abstract idea that we're going to be talking about. There's going to be more, but as we get down further along the tree, all this stuff is going to start making a little bit more sense. So anyway, if you're leaving with Kether, understand the I am that I am comes from the divine name. It's a state of being that is perfection and beauty and harmony. And when we talk about taking action in love and relationships, and we talk about the tree, we're always about how do we take actions that are towards unity and oneness and together and harmony versus separation. So anyway, I think we did pretty good on time today. So we're going to do this again next week. Oh yeah, one other thing that I could talk about is that how would you understand Kether in your daily life? How would you be able to take actions to be more like that, even though it's a unknowable quantity? Think of it from coming from Taoism. There is a line in the Tao that appears several times that talks about that the sage watches the 10,000 things rise and fall without cease. Meaning, or at least the way I've been taught to understand it, is that stuff's going to be happening all around us. And we get to witness it and we get to see it, but we don't necessarily have to dive in and fix it and change it or do anything. We understand that this process of the 10,000 things rising and falling is just part of the picture that we get to be experiencing every day. Don't take any of it personally. Anyway, so that's where we're at today. I'm going to see you next week from Bali. Maybe I'll even interview my wife. We're also going to be we have some interviews scheduled, so we're going to be talking to Clint Huff that I'll be promoting through the newsletter in the next day or so. And until then, enjoy us and come see us next week. And if you haven't, click this button here, join us and be part of our community talking about love, relationships, Kabbalah, and more on iTunes and Google Play through the mystical solutions of modern love. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you guys all next week. Thanks so much.